In the heart of ancient Israel, where shadows of oppression loomed over the tribes of God's chosen people, a prophecy whispered through time: a deliverer would rise, bound by a sacred vow, his strength not born of steel, but of spirit. This would be no ordinary man. He would walk with the weight of a divine covenant, carrying within him the thundering power of heaven. His name was Samson. Before he could speak, he was set apart as a Nazarite, consecrated to the Lord with vows that could not be broken: no wine, no blade upon his head, and no defilement by death. But strength, as mighty as it may be, becomes dangerous without wisdom, and destiny can fracture when pride blinds the heart. This is not merely the tale of a strong man. It is the journey of one chosen to uphold a sacred code, a man torn between heaven and earth, purpose and passion, vow and vengeance. From the burning fields of Gaza to the lion-shadowed vineyards of Timnah, from secret betrayals to the echoing collapse of a temple soaked in blood and glory, his story unfolds like thunder rolling through the valleys of Israel. In this chronicle, you will not only witness Samson's battles, but the spiritual war raging behind them. For every enemy he struck down in flesh, there were forces in the unseen realm watching, waiting, trembling. When Samson roared, kingdoms quaked. Prepare to enter a world of ancient riddles, burning vengeance, heavenly strength, and the haunting echo of one man's fall and rise. This is Samson, the Nazarite Code. Chapter 1. The Birth of a Legend. Long before the earth trembled under the mighty footsteps of warriors, and before kingdoms rose and fell like waves upon a restless sea, a promise echoed through the heavens, a promise destined to shape the fate of an entire nation. This was the dawn of a legend, the birth of a man whose strength and courage would shake the very foundations of power: Samson, the chosen Nazarite. In the quiet, rugged hills of ancient Israel, where the wind carried whispers of the past and the skies stretched wide with infinite possibility, lived a humble couple named Manoah and his wife. Though their lives were simple, their hearts were heavy with longing. For many years, they prayed beneath the blanket of stars, yearning for a child, a blessing, a sign from the divine that hope had not abandoned them. One fateful evening, as twilight dipped the world in hues of violet and gold, an extraordinary vision appeared before them. A radiant angel, shining with celestial light, stood in their presence. His voice was both gentle and commanding, echoing with the power of the heavens. "Behold," the angel declared, "a son shall be born unto you. He shall be a Nazarite, set apart before birth, consecrated to the Lord. No razor shall touch his head, for his strength lies in this sacred vow." This proclamation ignited a spark of awe and wonder in their souls. The message was clear. This child was not merely to be born. He was to be dedicated, marked by divine purpose, and destined for a path few could understand. The Nazarite vow was ancient and solemn, a lifelong dedication to holiness, involving abstinence from wine, avoidance of the unclean, and the sacred symbol of uncut hair, the source of Samson's unmatched power. News of the miraculous announcement traveled swiftly through the hills and valleys of Israel. A child blessed by heaven, chosen for greatness, a beacon of hope for a people shackled by oppression. The Philistines, enemies who darkened the land, cast long shadows of fear and cruelty over the Israelites. Yet in the midst of despair, a light was born, a young boy whose strength would challenge even the mightiest. As Manoah's wife carried the child within her, the anticipation grew heavier, filled with both excitement and a solemn understanding of the heavy responsibility this boy would bear. When Samson was finally born, his cries echoed like a roar across the hills, a sound that seemed to carry the very spirit of the mountains. Even as an infant, his presence was extraordinary. His eyes sparkled with fierce light, and his demeanor hinted at the strength and destiny that awaited him. But Samson's birth was more than a moment of joy. It was a covenant between heaven and earth, a beginning of a divine mission fraught with danger and triumph. The Nazarite code that bound him was not just a set of rules. It was a shield and a sword, a sacred identity that separated him from ordinary men and marked him as a warrior of faith. This chapter invites us to step back in time, to a world where miracles were real and the battle between good and evil was not just fought on fields of war, but within the very souls of men. It is here, amid faith and prophecy, that the first threads of Samson's incredible story are woven. His birth was a spark of hope in a dark age, a promise that even in the darkest valleys, divine strength could rise. As we stand at the threshold of this epic tale, remember that sometimes legends begin not with thunderous roars or clashing swords, but with whispered prayers and the quiet faith of those who believe in something greater than themselves. Samson's story is that spark, a tale of strength, sacrifice, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Chapter 2. A Child Set Apart. From the very moment Samson opened his eyes to the world, it was clear he was no ordinary child. The air around him seemed charged with a mysterious energy, a silent declaration that he was set apart, marked by a destiny few could comprehend. His parents, Manoah, and his wife, watched over him with awe and reverence, knowing that the sacred Nazarite vow promised by the angel would shape every step of his life. As Samson grew, the signs of his extraordinary nature began to emerge. Unlike other children, he was not drawn to simple play or common pleasures. Instead, there was a fierceness in his spirit, a restlessness in his soul, as if the very power of the heavens flowed through his veins. The vow that bound him forbade him from drinking wine or touching anything unclean, and perhaps most notably, his hair was never to be cut, a symbol of his unbroken covenant with the divine. This vow was not just a rule, but a sacred code, an ancient promise that held immense power. For Samson, it was both a gift and a burden. It set him apart from his peers, made him different, and destined him for a path that would be filled with both glory and hardship. The villagers of ancient Israel whispered tales of the boy with the uncut hair and the piercing eyes. Some saw him as a blessing. Others viewed him with suspicion and fear. Yet, Samson's heart was pure, and his faith unshakable. His strength began to manifest in remarkable ways, feats that seemed impossible for one so young. He could uproot trees, break ropes, and wrestle wild beasts, his power growing with each passing day. But this strength was not merely physical. Samson's spirit was forged in the fires of faith, tempered by the divine promise made before his birth. The Nazarite code was a constant reminder of his sacred mission, to be a warrior for his people, a defender against the looming threat of the Philistines who oppressed Israel. His upbringing was unusual, shaped by this holy vow. Manoah and his wife raised him with discipline and devotion, teaching him the stories of their ancestors, the laws of God, and the weight of the Nazarite calling. They knew their son was destined for something greater than any ordinary life, a life that would demand courage beyond measure and faith beyond doubt. As Samson navigated his youth, he was tested in ways that no other child could imagine. Temptations and challenges came like storms, each one a trial to strengthen his resolve. The unseen battle between darkness and light played out in his very soul. His strength was a divine gift, but it required wisdom and humility to wield it rightly. This chapter draws us deeper into the mystery of Samson's early years, a time when a boy became a symbol of hope and a child's life became a living prophecy. We witness the forging of a hero, one set apart not just by rules, but by a calling that would lead him to clash with the forces threatening his people. The path of a Nazarite was lonely and demanding, yet Samson embraced it, driven by a vision greater than himself. His story reminds us that greatness often begins in solitude, shaped by discipline, faith, and the courage to stand apart in a world that fears what it does not understand. As we continue this journey, prepare to see how this child, set apart by divine decree, would grow into a warrior unlike any other, a man whose name would be remembered for generations, whose strength would shake empires, and whose life would be a testament to the power of faith and destiny. Chapter 3. The Enemy of Israel. In the land of Israel, shadows lengthened as a dark and ruthless enemy tightened its grip. The Philistines, fierce warriors from the western shores, had come like a storm, sweeping across the hills and valleys with their iron chariots and merciless swords. Their presence was more than a threat. It was an invasion that crushed hope and enslaved the people, pushing Israel to the brink of despair. These were no ordinary foes. The Philistines were skilled in warfare, cunning in strategy, and relentless in their oppression. Their temples echoed with the prayers to gods of power and destruction, and their armies seemed invincible. To many in Israel, resistance felt futile, a flicker of defiance that was swiftly extinguished by overwhelming force. But amidst the fear and chaos, a flame of hope flickered. Samson's story was not just one of strength, but of a rising force destined to challenge the darkness. The enemy was formidable, but the hand of destiny had chosen a champion, a man whose power was tied to a sacred vow, a man who would stand as a living barrier between Israel's survival and its utter destruction. The Philistines mocked the Israelites, scorned their faith, and sought to break their spirit. Towns were razed, fields burned, and families torn apart. Their iron grip spread through the land like wildfire. The people cried out for deliverance, for a hero who could rise up and turn the tide. Samson's youth was shadowed by this looming danger. He grew in a world where every day was a battle for survival, where the sound of war drums and the clash of swords were constant reminders of the enemy's might. But the strength that simmered within him was more than muscle and might. It was a divine force, fueled by the sacred Nazarite code, a power that the Philistines could neither understand nor foresee. This chapter takes us into the heart of that conflict, a struggle not just of armies and weapons, but of faith against fear, light against darkness. We see the relentless pressure on Israel, the growing desperation of a people on the edge, and the stirring of a warrior whose very existence was a challenge to the Philistines' reign. Samson's presence was a beacon of resistance, a symbol that even in the darkest times, courage could rise. His story unfolds against this backdrop of war and oppression, a tale of defiance that echoes through the ages. The enemy may have been powerful, but Samson's spirit was unbreakable. As we journey through this chapter, feel the weight of the conflict, the tension of the battlefield, and the stirring of a legend that would shake the very foundations of the Philistine power. The stage is set for an epic showdown, where the fate of a nation hangs in the balance, and one man's strength will become the sword that cuts through the darkness. Prepare to witness the rise of Israel's enemy, and the hero who will face him, armed not just with muscle, but with the power of divine destiny. Chapter 4. The Secret of Strength. In the heart of Israel's darkest hour, whispers of an extraordinary power began to spread, an unyielding force that could shatter chains and topple armies. This power belonged to Samson, a man unlike any other, marked from birth by a sacred vow, the Nazarite code. His strength was a divine gift, a secret locked away in the strands of his uncut hair. The Nazarite vow was not merely a tradition, it was a covenant with the Almighty. To be a Nazarite meant to live set apart, dedicated entirely to God's service. It demanded purity, discipline, and sacrifice. No wine or fermented drink, no touching anything dead, and above all, never to cut the hair that symbolized the vow itself. Samson's hair was more than a physical trait. It was the source of his supernatural strength, a living symbol of his consecration. Each strand held a spark of divine power, flowing from the heavens directly into his being. The Philistines saw only a man of immense muscle, but Israel understood that Samson's might was a holy force, an unbreakable link between heaven and earth. From his earliest days, Samson was trained to honor this sacred code. His parents, guided by divine instruction, nurtured him carefully, teaching him the importance of obedience to God's commands. They knew that the battles ahead would test more than his body. They would challenge his faith, his spirit, and his commitment to the vow that set him apart. Samson's strength was breathtaking, but it was not simply physical. It was a testament to what faith and divine purpose could achieve when intertwined. This power allowed him to perform feats that stunned friend and foe alike, tearing lions apart with bare hands, toppling city gates, and standing unyielding against waves of enemies. Yet the secret of his strength was fragile. It depended entirely on his devotion to the Nazarite code. One wrong step, one moment of doubt, and that divine force could be lost forever. This fragile balance made Samson both mighty and vulnerable, a paradox of power and peril. In this chapter, we delve deep into the mystery of Samson's strength. We explore the sacred vow that defined his life and the spiritual essence that made him a living weapon against the darkness. It is a story of holiness fused with heroism, where every muscle flexed in battle is a testament to divine favor and unshakable faith. Prepare to witness the unveiling of the Nazarite code, the hidden covenant that fuels Samson's extraordinary might. Understand how his strength is not just a gift, but a responsibility, a sacred trust between man and God that would shape the destiny of Israel. This is the secret of strength, the force that sets Samson apart, the flame that burns bright within the chosen Nazarite. Chapter 5. The Lion and the Honey. The sun had barely risen over the rugged hills of Judah when Samson, the young Nazarite, set out on a journey that would mark the beginning of his legend. His path led him through a wild and untamed land, where the very earth seemed alive with ancient power. It was here, amid the whispering grasses and rocky cliffs, that Samson faced his first true test of strength and courage. As he walked, the air suddenly shifted, the stillness broken by a terrifying roar that echoed through the valley. From the shadows of the dense brush, a mighty lion emerged, its golden mane glowing in the morning light, eyes blazing with feral intensity. This was no ordinary beast. It was a creature of raw power and primal fury, a guardian of the wilderness that challenged any who dared cross its path. Without hesitation, Samson stepped forward. His heart beat with fierce determination, fueled not only by the strength granted by his Nazarite vow, but by an unshakable spirit. This was more than a fight for survival. It was a battle between divine purpose and untamed chaos. With a roar that matched the lion's own, Samson faced the beast head-on. The struggle was fierce and brutal, claws against muscle, teeth against unyielding flesh. Yet, the divine strength within Samson surged forth like a tempest. With hands stronger than iron and courage burning like a sacred fire, he tore the lion apart, victorious over the wild force that sought to halt his destiny. Days later, as he retraced his steps, Samson found a strange and wondrous sight. Bees had nested in the carcass of the lion, crafting a hive filled with golden honey. It was a mysterious gift from nature itself, sweet and pure amidst the aftermath of death and battle. Samson's riddle was born from this encounter, a puzzle woven with the threads of life and death, strength and sweetness. At his wedding feast, he would challenge the Philistines with this riddle, a test of wit and wisdom that would echo through the halls of history. This chapter reveals not only Samson's physical might, but the cunning and complexity of his mind. It is a tale of bravery meeting intellect, where every action carries a deeper meaning, and every victory is both a battle and a lesson. Join us as we journey through this moment of triumph and enigma, where a lion's roar gives way to the whisper of bees, and the seeds of Samson's legend are sown in honey and strength. Chapter 6. The Riddle of the Wedding Feast. The day of celebration dawned bright and full of promise. In the village of Timnah, the air buzzed with excitement as the people gathered to witness the wedding feast of Samson, the mighty Nazarite. It was a day to honor tradition, to weave alliances, and to rejoice in the union of a young man destined for greatness. Yet beneath the laughter and music, a challenge awaited, a test of mind as sharp as any blade. Samson, known for his extraordinary strength, was also gifted with a cleverness that few could match. As the feast unfolded, he rose to pose a riddle to his Philistine guests, an enigma crafted from the strange and miraculous events of his recent encounter with the lion. His words, both poetic and cryptic, stirred curiosity and unease. Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. The guests pondered, their faces darkening with frustration and suspicion. This was no ordinary riddle. It was a puzzle laced with hidden meaning, a reflection of Samson's own journey, where strength and vulnerability intertwined. To solve it was to peer into the mystery of life itself. Days passed as the Philistines sought the answer, desperate to unravel the secret that Samson held. Their frustration grew, and with it, the tension between them and their formidable opponent. For Samson's riddle was more than a game. It was a challenge to their pride, a symbol of the struggle between two peoples locked in a battle for survival and honor. At last, under pressure and cunning persuasion, the answer was revealed. But the victory came at a cost. The breach of the riddle's secret sparked anger and conflict, igniting a chain of events that would lead to fierce confrontations and fierce spiritual battles. This chapter unveils the power of words, the weight of wit, and the subtle ways in which Samson's strength extended beyond muscle to mind and spirit. It is a tale of cleverness as a weapon, and the dangers that come when secrets are betrayed. Join us as we delve into this pivotal moment, where riddles become weapons and a wedding feast turns into the prelude of war. Chapter 7. The Fiery Revenge. Anger blazed in Samson's heart like a roaring fire, fierce and unyielding. The betrayal at the wedding feast had pierced his pride, and the insult to his people, the Philistines, would not go unanswered. His spirit burned not only with personal vengeance, but with a divine fury that set the stage for a battle unlike any before. In the quiet darkness of the night, Samson's mind sharpened as he planned his retaliation. The fields of the Philistines stretched wide and golden under the moonlight, ripe with grain, olive trees heavy with fruit, and vineyards lush and bursting with life. They were symbols of prosperity for the enemy, but for Samson, they would soon become instruments of fiery judgment. With strength unmatched by any mortal, Samson unleashed his wrath. He set ablaze the fields, vineyards, and olive groves, sending smoke and flames billowing into the night sky like a thunderous storm. The destruction was swift, merciless, and terrifying, a clear message to the Philistines that their cruelty would be met with divine justice. As fire raged across the land, so too did the war between Samson and the Philistines intensify. His acts of revenge were not just physical strikes. They were battles fought in the spiritual realm, clashes of will and faith where the stakes were the very soul of Israel. The tension grew, and with it, the hatred that fueled Samson's next moves. Yet even as flames consumed the land, a deeper purpose burned within Samson's heart, a call to defend his people and reclaim their freedom. The Philistines, enraged and humiliated, sought retaliation with armies and weapons, but none could match the fury and strength of the Nazarite warrior. Samson moved like a force of nature, striking fear into the hearts of his enemies. His hands tore through armor. His voice roared like thunder across the valleys. He was not merely a man wielding brute force. He was a vessel of divine power, chosen to deliver justice where none else dared. Whispers spread among the people of Israel about Samson's fiery vengeance. To some, he was a hero, a mighty protector; to others, a tempest of wrath. But all understood that his battles were more than wars of flesh and blood. They were spiritual wars, battles for the heart of a nation, fought in shadow and flame. As the fires died down and smoke drifted over the charred fields, Samson stood tall, a figure carved from storm and flame. The enemy had been scorched, their strength broken, yet the war was far from over. The path ahead would be marked by even greater trials, betrayals, and sacrifices. But in that moment, the flame of Samson's fiery revenge burned bright, a beacon of unyielding courage, a reminder that even in the darkest nights, a warrior's spirit can ignite hope and light the way for his people. Chapter 8. The Woman of Timnah. In the rugged hills of Timnah, where the vineyards ripened under the blazing sun, Samson's fate took a twist that would change everything. It was here that the fierce warrior met Delilah, a woman whose beauty was as captivating as the desert night sky and whose eyes hid secrets darker than the deepest shadows. Delilah was not merely a woman. She was a test, a challenge to Samson's strength and spirit. The Philistines, cunning and relentless, saw in her the perfect weapon to unravel the mighty Nazarite. They offered her gold, riches beyond imagination, to uncover the secret that made Samson invincible. Samson, proud and unyielding, allowed himself a rare glimpse of tenderness. Love, or perhaps a complicated trust, bound him to Delilah. But the more he revealed, the more the danger grew. Her questions were like daggers, her smiles masks hiding betrayal. Days turned into nights of whispered secrets and stolen moments. But Delilah's heart was locked to the Philistine cause. She wove a web of lies and longing, seeking the truth behind Samson's power. Her allure was a battlefield as fierce as any clash of swords, a war fought in silence and shadows. The tension mounted. Samson's strength was legendary, yet Delilah's persistence was relentless. She pressed him with gentle words and weary eyes, until finally, a sliver of truth slipped from his lips, the sacred Nazarite vow, the uncut hair that was the source of his unmatched might. The moment the secret was revealed, the balance of power shifted like the sands of the desert wind. Delilah's smile turned cold, and the Philistines closed in like a pack of wolves, ready to strike. But beneath the surface, Samson's spirit still blazed with a fire that no betrayal could extinguish. The story of his love and downfall would echo through the ages, a powerful reminder that even the strongest heroes are vulnerable to the quiet storms of the heart. Chapter 9. The Fall of the Nazarite. The moment Delilah betrayed Samson, the mighty Nazarite's world began to crumble. In a hidden chamber, under the cloak of night, she called forth the Philistine soldiers, her heart heavy with the weight of treachery. Samson, once a towering figure of invincibility, now stood vulnerable, his secret laid bare. With hands trembling, Delilah cut the sacred locks of Samson's hair, the symbol of his covenant with the divine, the source of his legendary strength. As each strand fell away, a profound silence fell upon the room, as if the very heavens held their breath. The loss was immediate and devastating. Samson's strength, once boundless, drained from his limbs like water slipping through sand. The chains that once could not hold him now snapped shut, binding him in iron shackles and dragging him into captivity. The Philistines rejoiced, their oppressors subdued at last. They blinded him, cruelly removing his sight, and cast him into a dark prison, a place where hope seemed distant and the light of faith flickered weakly. But even in darkness, Samson's spirit refused to be extinguished. Memories of his childhood, his sacred vow, and the promise of divine purpose kindled a flame deep within his heart. He endured the torment, the humiliation, and the pain, not as a broken man, but as a warrior in waiting. The fall of the Nazarite was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter, a test of faith, resilience, and redemption. In the shadows of captivity, Samson would find the strength to rise once more, proving that even the greatest falls can lead to the most glorious victories. Chapter 10. The Prisoner's Redemption. In the cold, dark depths of the Philistine prison, Samson's body was broken, but his spirit remained unyielding. Blinded and shackled, he was a shadow of the man who once tore lions apart and toppled city gates. Yet within those bleak walls, a fierce fire of redemption began to burn. Each day, as the guards mocked and jeered, Samson wrestled with his despair and failure. He remembered the sacred Nazarite vow, the solemn promise that had set him apart from birth, binding him to a destiny greater than any earthly power. The hair that had been his strength was gone, but the covenant was eternal, etched into the very core of his being. In the quiet moments between chains and darkness, Samson's mind traveled back to the moments before his fall, his battles, his mistakes, and his lost trust. Slowly, a new resolve formed, stronger than before, to reclaim his faith, to rise not by his own might, but by the power granted from above. His heart turned to prayer, a desperate plea for forgiveness, for courage, for the return of the divine strength that once flowed through him. The prison was no longer just a place of captivity. It became the crucible where Samson's soul was refined, purified by suffering and hope. Around him, the Philistines prepared to celebrate their victory, boasting over the fallen hero who had brought them so much fear. But Samson's redemption was quietly gathering force, like the first spark before a raging fire. In that prison, the seeds of his final stand were sown, the moment when a Nazarite would rise not as a man, but as a legend, a story of faith reborn, of strength restored through surrender, and of a light that even darkness could never extinguish. Chapter 11. The Final Stand. The day had come. The great temple of Dagon, god of the Philistines, stood tall and proud, filled with revelry and triumphant cries. The Philistines gathered in masses, celebrating what they believed was their ultimate victory over Samson, the once feared Nazarite whose strength had been broken, whose spirit had been crushed. But hidden in the shadows of the prison, Samson's heart burned with a fire that no chains could hold. Though blinded, shackled, and weakened, his spirit was a tempest ready to explode. His hair, though shorn, had begun to grow again, a visible sign of hope and the unbroken covenant with the divine. With a strength born not from muscle alone, but from a faith deeper than any earthly power, Samson was led to the temple to be mocked and displayed as a trophy. The Philistines, unaware of the storm gathering within this fallen giant, reveled in their apparent triumph. As the crowd roared and the temple shook with laughter and music, Samson positioned himself between the towering pillars of the temple, a final moment of silent preparation before the storm. Summoning every ounce of his renewed strength and the divine power whispered through his veins, Samson grasped the pillars with hands that had known despair but now burned with righteous fury. With a mighty roar that shook the heavens and earth, he pushed with all his might. The pillars groaned under his grip, cracks spiderwebbing through stone and timber. The temple trembled and then began to collapse, a cataclysmic fall that sent shards of rock crashing down like thunder, toppling the house of false gods and the armies within. In this final act of sacrifice and redemption, Samson delivered a blow not only to his enemies, but to despair itself, reclaiming his place as a hero of faith and strength. Though the temple fell, Samson's legacy rose, a testament to the power of unwavering faith and the truth that even in the darkest hour, the flame of hope can ignite the impossible. Chapter 12. The Legacy of Strength. The dust settled over the ruins of the Philistine temple, but the story of Samson did not fade with the stones. His final stand echoed through generations, a clarion call to courage, faith, and divine power. From the hills of Israel to the farthest reaches of the ancient world, tales were told of the mighty Nazarite who wielded strength not just in his muscles, but in his unwavering trust in a higher power. His name became synonymous with the triumph of the spirit over oppression. Leaders and warriors alike found inspiration in Samson's life, a beacon shining through centuries of hardship and conflict. His story was not just a chronicle of brute force, but a testament to the struggles of faith, the pain of human weakness, and the incredible power of redemption. The children of Israel whispered his name during times of peril, knowing that even in their darkest moments, the spirit of Samson walked alongside them, urging them to rise, to fight, to believe. Religious scholars and storytellers passed down the Nazarite code, illuminating the sacred vows that shaped Samson's life, his dedication to purity, his calling to set himself apart, and the divine covenant that fueled his extraordinary feats. But perhaps the greatest legacy Samson left was the lesson that true strength lies not in physical might alone, but in the courage to face one's flaws, to overcome personal trials, and to surrender fully to the will of the divine. His life was a saga of fire and faith, a dance between human frailty and heavenly power, proving that even the mightiest can fall and rise again stronger than ever before. Chapter 14, The Code Revealed. The Nazarite vow was no ordinary promise. It was a sacred covenant between man and the divine, a code of holiness and power that marked Samson's very existence from the moment he entered this world. This was a vow that set him apart from birth, a call to a life of dedication, discipline, and supernatural strength bestowed by God. To be a Nazarite meant to live in constant separation from worldly indulgences and distractions. No wine or fermented drink could pass their lips, no razor was allowed to touch their head, and they were to avoid contact with anything unclean. Each of these rules was more than mere ritual. They formed a spiritual armor, a binding oath that connected Samson to a source of power far beyond human strength. Samson's long hair was the visible symbol of this sacred code, a living testament to his vow. It was not simply hair, it was a divine conduit of strength, a crown of consecration that set him apart as God's chosen instrument. When that bond was severed, when Delilah's deception led to the loss of his hair, Samson's physical power faded, showing how closely intertwined his strength was with his faithfulness to the Nazarite code. But the true meaning of the vow went much deeper. It was a call to holiness, a demand for a heart and soul that remained pure and devoted amid a world riddled with temptation and spiritual battles. It was a path of sacrifice, requiring Samson to forsake earthly pleasures and to stand firm against the encroaching darkness. This divine code was a mystery to many, but through Samson's life, its secrets were revealed in the most vivid ways, through victories, failures, and moments of profound reflection. It was a lesson that true strength is not merely physical, but is born of faith, obedience, and the courage to remain loyal to one's sacred commitments, even when the cost is great. For all who hear his story, the Nazarite vow stands as a powerful beacon, a timeless message about the price and power of consecration, the strength found in unwavering faith, and the eternal struggle to live a life set apart in a world filled with trials. Chapter 15, The Flame That Never Dies. Samson's life ended in a thunderous roar, a final act of courage and sacrifice that echoed through the ages. But his story, far from fading in his silence, became a flame that never dies, a beacon of divine strength and unyielding faith that continues to inspire. In his last moments, Samson called upon the strength of the God who had once set him apart, the source of his miraculous power. Though broken and blind, his spirit burned bright with resolve. With one final push, he tore down the pillars of the Philistine temple, collapsing the stronghold upon his enemies and upon himself. It was an act of redemption, a sacrifice that cleansed his earlier failings and sealed his legacy as a hero chosen by God. The flame of Samson's life is not just the memory of his might or his battles. It is the eternal spark of hope and courage that burns in every heart willing to stand for what is right. It reminds us that even in our weakest moments, when darkness seems overwhelming, the power of faith can ignite a strength greater than any earthly force. Samson's story teaches us that true strength is not just in muscle or weaponry, but in the courage to trust in a higher purpose, to keep faith when all seems lost, and to rise, time and again, against the odds. His flame symbolizes the undying spirit of those who choose to walk the path of holiness, guided by the divine code that once set him apart. As we close the chapter on Samson, we carry forward the message of his life, a call to embrace the power within, to live boldly, and to let our own inner flames shine brightly against the shadows of the world. The Nazarite flame is eternal. It is a light that no darkness can extinguish. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the life of Samson, a legend of faith, strength, and sacrifice. We hope his story inspires you to find your own inner courage and to stand firm in your convictions, no matter the challenges you face. If you enjoyed this tale, Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more epic stories from history and scripture. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep the flame of faith burning bright.